So what I'm going to do for the next, I think, half an hour and then have some questions, I hope, is talk a bit more about, from the Education Endowment Foundation's point of view, how do we go from the conversations that I've been watching today, which is the value of evidence. I don't think we need to say much more about that, but how do we actually make that come to life and make a difference in the classrooms or schools that we're working in. I'm going to try and not say anything at all interesting for the first 3 minutes, but somebody asked me not to start early. Oh, she's back, so I can now. Not that it will be interesting. Anyway, just so you get a sense of the organisation that I represent, we're a new organisation that's been around for a couple of years, and we're in a fortunate position. We're an independent charity. We're going to be spending about £200 million over the next 12 years trying to build an evidence base of what makes the difference, particularly to raise the attainment and disadvantaged children. How can you find out more? How can you present that evidence? And most importantly, how can you put it to work in our classrooms? We were established with an endowment from government, £125 million, but we'll spend more because we're raising more, and we're already underway, and I'll talk a bit more about that. Just to set the scene, because I guess one of the things that interests me most is, yes, educational research, of course, how can you deny it, but what's the purpose? And I'm going to be unashamed and say that the core driving purpose for me in this work, and just for background, I started teaching, 30 years ago in East London. The core driving purpose of this work is focusing on this issue of the attainment gap in English education. I'm not going to spend long on it, but you'll know it, and this is just a stark kind of reminder that in English education there is this marked impact on your education outcomes by the wealth of your parents. It's not a bad thing to stand up here and speak about in this particular venue, but anyway, we won't go into that right now. And in English education there's a particular issue that the gap widens throughout your time at school. So there is a gap based on your family's wealth, and the gap gets wider. I don't know about you, but I came into education partly because I was trying to create greater opportunities for those children who needed more. And the outcome of our system is, yes, we do that, but actually the gap widens between children who have and those who have not. So that's the driving issue for our work. How do we use evidence better to deal with that issue? And I'm going to say unashamedly, I think that is the most pressing issue of us as a generation of educators in this country right now. This is an issue we've got to face down. And three things you could do about that issue. You could ask the question, if we just had more money in our schools, would that issue go away? Is it just that we haven't got enough money? And I'm going to argue, no, it's not just about having more money. This chart quickly shows you that on the red line is the real terms increase in education spending in this country since 2001. And the black line shows you our international performance in the Pisa, in the Pearl schools on this case. And there is not a clear link between money and attainment and money and school effectiveness. You need enough, but just giving us more money wouldn't necessarily solve this problem. So it's not just about more money. And while we're on it, the other bit of evidence for that is here are the public spends all adjusted for different countries around the world. And here are their results on the Pisa scores. As you can see, there isn't a good link between how much money you get or you give your education system and your results on the international tables. The population of Luxembourg are quite rightly asking hard questions of their education system, and the other country you might put on there isn't on there at the moment is Austria, which also is a high funder of its education without the outcomes. And you can see for England that we are in mid-table in terms of our funding, but we're not performing as well as we should on the international tables, and it's not just about money. So why is Finland doing so much better than us? Why is Korea doing so much better than us, even though they get less funding? So it's not just about more money, but you need enough. The other thing you might say, well, if it's not about more money, is it about more accountability? So we just get more accountability in our system. Would that close this gap? Would that solve the problem? Well, the accountability framework we work under is already pretty intense. You could turn the knobs a bit more, and there are people who spend a lot of time tweaking these knobs around accountability, and accountability matters. Intelligent accountability is key to an effective system. But I don't think it's just about yet more accountability is going to solve the problem. I'm making a presentation based on the fact that I think what will help solve the problem